Fated love stories, timeless tales of love, fantasy, and destiny.
Disclaimer: this story is a fictional inspirational tale crafted to highlight strength, resilience, and the power of belief. It is not based on real events or individuals. Any similarities are purely coincidental.
Chapter 1: A different kind of normal. The world moved fast, and Eden didn't. But that didn't mean he wasn't paying attention. From the narrow window of their one-room home in the heart of Lagos' Ejigonal slums, Eden watched the street like a scientist watches a lab experiment. His fingers twitched slightly with every movement he saw: pothole-jumping bikes, women arguing over the price of tomatoes, children tossing sachets of water at each other like water balloons. To most people, it was chaos. But to Eden, it was rhythm. It was a pattern. The left side of his body often lagged when he moved. His right foot dragged ever so slightly behind his left when he walked, and sometimes his words came out like puzzle pieces that didn't fit. Kids noticed. They always noticed. Eden the robot, they'd shout on the way to school. Walk straight now, or you'll download virus. Today was no different. Eden sat on the cracked cement porch, legs folded under him, drawing patterns in the dust with a broken pencil. His little sister Lila was nearby, using an old piece of cardboard as a pretend school board. "Eden, say the word on the board," she sang. Eden smiled, barely lifting his eyes. Elephant. Lila clapped like he'd just won an award. "You're so smart. Smarter than my teacher self." Eden chuckled, rubbing his temple as he looked up at the clouds. "They don't think so at school. Mama says they don't have eyes," Lila shrugged. Just then, their mother, Nora, stepped out of the house, wiping her hands on a faded apron. Her eyes, those kind, tired eyes, swept over her children. Eden's eyes met hers for a brief second, and in that glance, he could read everything: pride, exhaustion, and something else: worry. "Lila, go fetch water," Nora said gently, then turned to Eden. "You feeling okay today, my genius?" Eden nodded. Nora squatted beside him, holding a small, battered wooden box in her hands. "I found this when I was cleaning. Remember this?" She opened the box to reveal an old chess set. The pieces were mismatched and worn, some replaced with bottle caps and screws, but the board, though faded, still had life. Eden blinked at it, entranced. "My papa taught me with this," she said, her voice soft and nostalgic. "I used to beat all the boys on the street." She nudged his arm. "Wanna learn?" Eden reached for the pieces slowly, fingers trembling not from fear, but from excitement. Something clicked. The black and white squares weren't just a game board, they were an invitation to a world with rules, strategy, and logic. A world where his body didn't have to run. Only his mind. And Eden's mind? It ran faster than anyone knew. Chapter 2: When They Laughed. The next day at school, Eden sat in the back row as usual, his elbows tucked in, notebook open, pencil gripped tightly in his left hand. The teacher's voice floated in and out of his consciousness like a radio dial being tuned: numbers, history, dates, facts, background noise to the real work happening inside his head. He was thinking about the knight. Not the one from the textbook, the one that rides into battle with swords and flags, but the L-shaped one from the chessboard. The one his mother said could leap over others, even when trapped. Eden liked that piece. It didn't move like the rest, and yet, it always found a way. "Hey Eden, what are you scribbling there?" It was Remy. Big mouth. Bigger ego. Son of a local trader and king of classroom teasing. Eden didn't respond, just shifted slightly in his seat. His limp was always more obvious when he moved too quickly. That was all the opening Remy needed. Look at him. Drawing nonsense again. Maybe if you focused on walking straight, you'd win a race for once. The class erupted in cruel laughter, echoing louder than the school bell ever could. Eden's fingers tightened around his pencil. He didn't cry, he never cried at school. But he felt the sting settle deep in his chest, like something folding inward. Their teacher, Mr. Kazim, hushed the room with a clap. Enough. Remy, out. As the room quieted, Eden went back to his notebook. He wasn't drawing nonsense. He was designing a chess puzzle, one that involved a brilliant trap for a queen. In his sketch, the knight was the hero. Just like he wished he could be. That afternoon, Eden didn't wait for Lila. He limped home alone, ignoring the calls and laughter from the street. As he turned the corner near their apartment, a small crowd caught his attention. A white canopy, loudspeakers, music, and something unusual, men in black t-shirts with bright green writing on the back. Hopeside Foundation, building tomorrow's geniuses. They were setting up a table with books, games, and something that made Eden stop in his tracks, a full-size chessboard. One of the men was arranging pieces when he noticed the boy staring. "You like chess?" he asked, smiling. Eden nodded slowly. "You play?" "Not really, only once," Eden said. The man laughed kindly. "Well, once is enough to start. Want to try a game?" Eden hesitated. His legs ached. His back was tired. But something in the man's tone felt like permission. Like safety. "Okay," he whispered. And so, Eden sat. The man explained the rules, but Eden already knew them. Within minutes, he was countering moves with precision, reading patterns before they unfolded. The man exchanged a stunned look with someone in a black SUV nearby. The window lowered slightly, and inside sat a man in a suit with eyes dark as obsidian, watching closely. The billionaire. The founder. The man with a brother Eden didn't yet know about. He leaned back in his seat, a slow smile curling on his lips. "Get his name," he said quietly to his assistant. "And make sure he comes back tomorrow." Chapter 3, The Invitation. The next morning, Lila buzzed around the tiny kitchen like a butterfly with too much energy. She was trying to balance a plastic container on her head while pouring cereal into Eden's bowl. It wobbled once, then clattered to the floor. "Mama," she whined, dramatically covering her eyes. Their mother laughed gently as she picked up the mess. Eden smiled, spoon halfway to his mouth. Mornings like these were rare but golden, no tension, no hospital bills, no arguments. Just the three of them, wrapped in warmth that poverty couldn't touch. Then came the knock. Sharp. Firm. Unexpected. Their mother tensed immediately, drying her hands on a towel. Eden tilted his head, unusual visitors were never a good sign in their neighborhood. At the door stood a sharply dressed woman with a black Hopeside Foundation lanyard around her neck. She smiled warmly, clipboard in hand, and introduced herself as Tonia, one of the outreach coordinators. "I'm here for Eden," she said, her eyes scanning past his mother until they landed on the boy seated at the table. "For what?" his mother asked, defensive and wary. Tonia lowered her clipboard and crouched to Eden's eye level. "Yesterday, you played chess at the community setup, right?" Eden nodded slowly, his heart skipping. "Well, our director, Mr. Dunlawdy, he watched you. He thinks you have an extraordinary mind, Eden. He'd like to invite you to a weekend mentorship camp. Just 2 days. All expenses covered. Safe accommodation, food, and most importantly, learning." His mother's eyes clouded with hesitation. "I understand your concern," Tonia added gently, turning to her. "We'll send a bus with staff, and you're welcome to visit or call anytime. But I promise, ma'am, this could change his life." The room fell silent. Eden's mother looked at her son, his worn sandals, the way his shoulders slouched slightly from years of trying not to stand out. And then, for the first time in what felt like forever, she saw something else in his eyes. Hope. "I'll pack his things," she said quietly. Later that afternoon, the bus arrived. Eden had never seen anything so clean, everything from the seats to the bottled water waiting at the side screamed luxury. He sat in the front seat, hugging his small backpack. Lila waved furiously from the doorway, while their mother stood still, hands clasped tightly, lips moving in silent prayer. As the bus rolled out of the slums, Eden stared out the window, watching the roads change from cracked concrete to smooth tar, from rusted zinc roofs to glittering buildings. And when the skyline shifted completely, revealing a sprawling, ivy-covered estate at the edge of the city, he realized this wasn't just a camp. This was a door. A doorway into a life he never imagined he could belong in. A door that someone powerful had just opened, for him. Chapter 4, The Camp of Mines. The bus glided through the gates of the Hopeside Foundation estate, its tires purring against a smooth, pristine path. Eden's wide eyes reflected the grandeur of his new surroundings, rolling lawns, tall trees, and a sprawling building that seemed as if it were pulled from a dream. It didn't look like the camps he'd seen before, filled with crowded dormitories and makeshift tables. No, this was something else. It was a world away from the cramped apartment he shared with his family. A universe of sharp angles, glass windows, and towering iron gates that promised both safety and mystery. The camp, as it turned out, wasn't a regular place for just anyone. This was a special place, reserved for a select few. Not just for chess, not just for the marginalized or gifted, but for the extraordinary. And when Eden stepped off the bus, he was keenly aware that, in some way, he was being initiated into something much bigger than chess. As he walked into the grand hall, the sheer magnitude of it all hit him in waves. Marble floors, polished wood paneling, and a vast chandelier casting soft light over the gathering room where a few other kids were chatting in low voices. Some were talking about games, others were discussing science and technology, yet no one was talking about chess. Eden stood a little apart, looking around cautiously, feeling out of place despite the excitement that bubbled inside him. He hadn't played anyone yet, at least, not in a real match, with an opponent who knew what they were doing. He just knew how to read the pieces. Eden? A voice pulled him from his thoughts. He turned to find a young man in a tailored suit approaching him, his expression warm but slightly reserved. His eyes, however, gleamed with a spark of curiosity, like he had seen something in Eden that no one else had. "I'm Charles," the man introduced himself, extending a hand. "Eden," he responded, shaking his hand gently. "You're the one with the potential," Charles said with a slight smile, scanning Eden's face. "I'm here to show you the real test. This is a different kind of camp than the ones you've seen before." Eden's heart skipped, uncertain of what this could mean. "I'm ready," Eden said, more to himself than Charles, feeling the weight of those words. He was ready. He had to be. Charles led him into a room where several others were already seated at long, gleaming tables. Chessboards were laid out in front of them, but the atmosphere was different here. It wasn't the buzz of kids excited to play a game, it was a focus, a sense of purpose in the air. Everyone's gaze was intent on their boards, as though they weren't just playing to win, they were playing to prove something deeper. Charles gestured to an empty chair. "Sit, Eden. You'll play your first match in a few minutes. But first, know this, here at the Hopeside Foundation, chess is more than just a game. It's a test of mind, body, and soul. We take the most gifted players and break them down, only to build them back up again." Eden's curiosity flared, but before he could speak, Charles held up his hand. "I know you have questions. I promise you will get answers. But first, we need to see if you're ready. Not just for chess, but for everything." With that, the games began. Eden took his seat. Across from him sat a boy slightly older than him, with dark, curly hair and a confident expression. His name was Leo, and he was a player. Eden could feel the energy shift as the game began. This wasn't the friendly match he played back in the community hall. This was intense, razor-sharp focus with every move calculated, every piece put in place with the intent to win. The clock on the table ticked down, each second passing like a hammer against the anvil. Eden's pulse raced. This wasn't just chess anymore. This was war. Each move was met with a counter, every piece designed to lead to something bigger. Eden's mind buzzed with calculations, with strategies, but also something else, a feeling that he was being watched, evaluated. The room wasn't just full of kids. It was full of observers, quietly analyzing each play, each reaction, each hesitation. And then it happened. Eden saw something. A move that Leo hadn't anticipated. A checkmate within 3 turns, set in motion with the quiet precision of someone who had been playing for years. The room was still. Charles was the first to speak, his voice cutting through the silence. Checkmate. Eden, you've just finished a game you had no business winning. Eden blinked, uncertain of what just happened. It felt too easy, too natural. You've outplayed him, Charles continued, his gaze narrowing. How did you know? Eden didn't have a clear answer. He just knew. It was like the pieces weren't just made of wood or plastic. They were made of thoughts, his instincts. Every movement, every shift on that board, was a reflection of something much deeper, something he couldn't fully grasp but knew instinctively. Leo's face turned red, his hands trembling. But instead of anger, there was something else in his eyes, a respect, a quiet acknowledgement. Eden didn't know what to make of it, but he didn't need to. He had just passed a test he didn't even realize he was taking. Chapter 5, The Next Step. The thrill of his first victory had barely settled when Charles led Eden away from the chessboard and into another wing of the Hopeside Foundation's sprawling estate. This time, the halls were quieter, with an air of seriousness that felt heavier than before. Eden had no idea what came next, but he knew this wasn't just about playing chess. He could feel it in the way the air seemed to hum with energy, a force that pushed him forward, deeper into the unknown. Follow me, Charles said, his voice calm but carrying an undertone of urgency. They passed through several hallways until they reached a door at the far end. Unlike the other rooms Eden had seen, this one wasn't decorated with chessboards or trophies. It was sterile, minimalist, and intimidating. Inside, a large whiteboard covered one entire wall, filled with complex algorithms, equations, and chess positions. At the center of the room stood a figure, a man, tall and imposing, dressed in a crisp suit. His presence filled the room in a way that left Eden feeling small, though he couldn't understand why. Eden, this is Richard Novak, Charles introduced, his tone almost reverential. He's the founder of the Hopeside Foundation. Richard turned his gaze toward Eden, his sharp eyes sizing him up in a way that felt almost invasive. You've impressed us, Richard said, his voice smooth, yet unwavering. Not just with your win today, but with something else. A spark. A potential that isn't easily seen. His lips curled into a faint smile, but there was something unreadable in his expression. But chess is only the beginning. Do you know why you're here, Eden? Eden swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the question pressing against him. He had no idea what was going on behind the walls of this organization, what deeper currents were flowing beneath the surface. But now that he had tasted a glimpse of that world, he couldn't ignore the call. I'm here to learn, Eden said, the words coming out unsure. Richard chuckled softly, as if Eden had missed something obvious. Yes, you'll learn. But the question is, how much are you willing to learn? How far are you willing to go? Eden's heart raced, a slight chill running down his spine. Charles stepped forward, sensing the hesitation. This camp is different, Eden. We don't just teach chess. We teach strategies, in life, in business, in every aspect of your existence. Chess is just a medium to push your mind to its limits. If you're serious about this, you'll have to give more than just your time. You'll have to give yourself. Richard's gaze softened, but there was still that intensity in his eyes. We don't just train champions here, Eden. We train leaders. Eden's mind raced. The pieces on the chessboard seemed to multiply in his mind, each representing a choice, each a potential path forward. This wasn't just about being the best player anymore. This was about something much bigger. The stakes had changed. And what exactly does that mean? Eden asked, finding his voice. His mother's face flashed in his mind, her tired eyes, the way she struggled to provide. He wanted to make her proud, to give her something better. But now, this felt like it could change everything. Richard studied him for a moment before responding. It means you'll face challenges you've never imagined. Tests of intellect, willpower, and even morality. Everything you do will be analyzed, critiqued. You'll learn how to think not just several steps ahead in a game, but in life. We will put you through the fire, Eden. And you'll either emerge stronger or break under the pressure. The weight of Richard's words hung in the air like an unspoken challenge. Eden could feel the heat of it pressing on his chest, but at the same time, there was something inside him, something that wanted to prove himself. I'm ready, Eden said, his voice steady now. I won't break. Richard's eyes flickered with something like approval. Good. Because there is no turning back now. Charles gave Eden a smile that was more encouraging than usual. The next stage begins now. You'll be given access to the Foundation's resources, our chess databases, your own mentor, and training that goes beyond anything you've ever experienced. But it's up to you how far you'll take it. We'll support you, but you'll do the rest. Eden's pulse quickened with both anticipation and trepidation. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was standing at the threshold of something monumental. He wasn't just going to learn chess, he was going to learn how to shape his future. Over the following weeks, Eden's days at the Hopeside Foundation blurred together in a whirlwind of chess drills, mental exercises, and strategy sessions. He spent hours every day studying, playing, and refining his skills, but it was clear that there was more to this experience than simply improving at chess. The games had started to feel like something deeper. Each match, each opponent, was a test of not just his intellect, but his ability to control his emotions, his impulses, and his responses to pressure. He had always been good at seeing the moves before they happened, but now, he had to learn to anticipate not only the pieces but the players themselves. And the more he played, the more he felt that elusive spark that Richard had mentioned. It was like a fire in his chest, igniting with every match he won, every challenge he overcame. But it wasn't just his victories that were fueling this fire, it was the thought of what lay beyond this camp. Of what he could become. By the end of the month, Eden was no longer just a boy with potential. He was starting to become something more, a force to be reckoned with. And his next big test, the one that would change everything, was waiting for him. The tournament was drawing closer, and with it, the realization that this wasn't just about chess anymore. It was about proving to the world, and to himself, that he could rise from the challenges he'd been born into. But no one told him what would happen when the true game began.